Hello everyone, my name is Joanna. Thank you so much for coming back. For those of you who are my subscribers, thank you so much for coming back. For those of you who are new, welcome. I hope whatever you find here you will like, and I hope you stay. Let me just be very brief. Interesting messages in the month of March. For one, they flowed very differently. There seems to be a lot of transformation going on, and I do, particularly in the month of March, and it seems to be consistent with almost every single sign. Very, very consistent. So if you are drawn to a certain sign that you don't necessarily look at, by all means listen and see if there's a message there for you. The messages are not time bound, which means there is no end and beginning. These messages may make sense to you because they have happened. You are in the middle of it happening, or it will happen at some point down the road. So do yourself a favor. If it doesn't make sense to you right away, listen to it in a few weeks' time or even a few months. And from those of you who are regular subbies and subscribers and you do comment, it looks like 98% of you find that this makes sense with as time passes. Also, my focus and intention is always, always, always to give you something to think about that will help you understand yourself more deeply. In other words, my focus isn't on predicting. If an information comes through that is of futuristic nature, I am more than happy always to give. However, my focus is more about helping you understand how you create, how you make things happen. Because the moment you know how to make things happen, you will stop waiting for someone to tell you what's going to happen, because you'll be able to create it. And that is always my aim. That is what I want to teach. That is what I do teach. And that is how Spirit is working with me. What can I give you to help you see yourself as the master of your own creation that you are, so that you can understand? And once you understand, you can create in a different way. So that is always my intention, and I hope that whatever comes through falls with that. Let's put it that way. I think that's all I have for you. Listen to the other signs if these don't make sense. Of course, this is general. It may not fit with everybody, although I'm very surprised how many of you are responding and saying this is exactly what you're going through. So also, very quickly, again, the layout is very different. I don't even have a layout this month, and it was mostly intuitive. So you will see some of the messages. I look at cards, and some of them I don't even look at cards because it's flowing. So the way information is flowing for me is also very different. So I am under also a transformation, if you will. And I think that's all I have. Of course, there's a 6-month projection for you down below from January till the end of June. If you're more interested in that information is there. And more than anything, thank you so much for liking, for sharing, for coming back. For those of you who are new, welcome. I hope you stay. Have yourself a wonderful month of March. And yeah, let's get going. Hello, beautiful Cancerians. These are going to be your messages for the month of March 2019. Where does the time go? Let me just turn the music down. Okay. There's something amazing about the energies that I feel for you this month. And it's not just the month of March. I feel this is going to continue to April or May. And as I always mention, these messages have no end date. They are very fluid. So let's spoil the surprise. There's something amazing happening with you guys. You're nearing an end of a very, very difficult period of your life. I want to call this a cycle. And I may use the terminology karmic, but all this to me signifies is that whatever you're nearing the end of has been with you for a long time. It's been plaguing you, so to speak, for quite some time. It is probably one of the most difficult things you have dealt with in this lifetime up until this point. Because the idea of unconditional love is coming up as a theme, chances are this is to do with love, how deeply you love or resent yourself. Those are the two opposites. And how, depending on what you feel, how you are when it comes to love, particularly unconditional love. And I feel like there's a layer that wants to be ripped out away from me in order to show the light that is within me. I'm being you now. And what is required for you right now is a whole bunch of compassion. Compassion for yourself, towards yourself. Forgiveness is key to everything. Oftentimes, and I would say in my Joanna's experience, working as a therapist, plus doing this work, forgiveness for self is probably one of the most difficult things that we humans tend to experience. And when we hold ourselves hostage, when we hold ourselves, in our own prisons, we are the ones that end up suffering. So I am now becoming you. So when I say I really mean you. That's just kind of how I speak. I literally tune into your energy. So I'm going to start with some of the words that came for you for the month of March. Face your fears is one of the themes. And these will be fears around love. And I'll talk about a little bit more about that in a second. But face your fears, and relief was another word that I got for you. When I was connecting more to the word relief, I felt that you were relieving pent-up energy. Now, pent-up energy is something that is, well, pent up, and it usually creates a whole bunch of unpleasant stuff. For one, it helps your thoughts get very disorganized, which may make you feel very anxious in certain situations. Point is that there is a relief coming to many of you, particularly those who have been seeking. And by seeking, I mean you have been putting the effort towards clearing yourself of things that no longer belong to you. And although it's a cryptic message, those of you who are meant to hear it, you'll understand it right away. This can connect to a person, a situation, an aspect of yourself, your past, people around you. You get the theme. I mean, it can be anything, theme in particular, nothing in particular. But it's important for me to say this because it symbolizes you letting go. You letting go of an old condition that has been inside of you for quite some time. And when I tune into what the condition is, I hear the words, I don't belong here. So it's a sense of belonging. And when we lack sense of belonging within ourselves, we then have a tendency to try to get it or pull it up from something or someone else. The unfortunate part of it is that it usually fails long term because it cannot be sustained. No one can give you something that is inherently a part of you already. And even if they give it to you, if you feel you are not worth it, you will give it back or you will push away. It's called self-sabotage. So whatever it is that you are releasing, and I actually saw cobwebs. So cobwebs is something that to me is very symbolic of hasn't been looked at in a while. It has been, well, you know what cobwebs are. When you don't clean certain places for quite some time, that's where cobwebs develop. And because you are releasing cobwebs, it tells me you are doing an inventory of your mind and you are choosing to no longer take care of someone else's clutter. Now, this is a metaphor, of course, and it symbolizes the need to let go of something that isn't yours. People's perceptions of you, your perception of the world as it was dictated by your environment or your family or how you were growing up, whatever ideas that you held dear to your heart, which then became your belief systems, particularly around undeserving or deserving love. You are choosing to do the responsible thing and to let go of what's not yours. And I'm getting a headache as I say this. And whatever it is that you are choosing to let go of has been causing you a lot of headaches lately. Now, this could be a metaphor for you living through circumstances that are not fun or weren't fun, or the thoughts about whatever it is that you're releasing is causing you physical headache, a lot of pressure. Yeah, that's how I'm going to leave this. So, what are some of the central themes, if that is it already, for the month of March? And I do want to say that it's not for March only. There is no end date. So if this doesn't make sense to you right away, and chances are, if it's meant to you, if it's meant for you, 99% it already makes sense to you. But it will, it might feel a little bit more clear, or it might seem more clear as the time goes on, and even into April and May. Okay, so what is the central theme? You have the card of Goblin and then the card of Moonlight in reverse. Just like with the other signs, these messages are very different this month. It's just a very different quality of communication that I'm receiving. So I actually look at cards much less, and it's just purely intuition. So I do have some pictures to look at, but they basically evoke certain conversation with spirit. So goblins is a message, and that's your theme. So this is what you might want to pay attention to. Goblins is a message that represents your shadow self or somebody else's shadows, which you have adopted as your own. So what are somebody else's shadows? They are projection of themselves that they have projected onto you, and then eventually they became your shadows. So this is very similar to you taking an inventory and choosing to do the responsible thing and no longer be responsible for things that aren't yours. This is very much rooted in a belief system. So particularly in terms of lacking something inside of yourself, whether it is self-worth, value, love, whatever it is that you feel you're lacking, I'm sure you have that. We all do. They represent shadow aspects of yourself. Those are the aspects of yourself that you are choosing to work on at this particular moment in order to find your way back into integration. Now, I just channeled this, and I literally was opening up to me word by word. So what is this essentially meaning, please? What is this saying? In order for you to feel like yourself, you first have to own all of yourselves, even the aspects of yourself you may not like. And that's pretty self-explanatory, but I want you to kind of sit on that a little bit. The next message you have is Moonlight in reverse. This is about overanalyzing. So if you are someone who's very critical about yourself, chances are that if you're starting to listen to your intuition, your old conditioning, your old belief system, your old ego self is going to come at you and tell you that you're losing your mind, this is not real, you're going crazy, you're overreacting, you're making things up, you're making too much of things are really not that bad. Prepare for that to happen. Those are the things that are meant to keep you down. Why? Well, because they offer you some protection. Now, that's very interesting. Why? What would we need protection from? Well, from being disappointed. So there's a theme here around safety, security, unconditional love, and worthiness. I feel many of you are either in the process of realizing you are more worthy than you thought, or you give yourself credit to, or in a very short order, you will begin to feel that way, or you'll start to think in that direction. And that's because you are in the place of expansion. I mean, this is birth and expansion. We all are. And we are all shifting and changing. The energies are the frequencies are extremely potent and allow us to look at things we haven't looked at before, which means anything that you have not dealt with from the past, anything that is a cobweb, is much more likely to come up to the surface in the next several months. Think of it this way. Think of it as you rebuilding yourself from ground up. In order for you to be a solid structure, you need to have a firm and solid foundation to withstand whatever it is that you build for yourself called life. That means that anything in your foundation, which is your structure, your stability, is not as it should be. This is the time for you to get rid of it. Now, when I say the word get rid of it, it's a figure of speech, because you cannot get rid of something that is inherently a part of you. When you have a history of disappointments and you realize that when it comes to love and other people, there really isn't such thing, so you just kind of close yourself off. Where was I going with this? Once you begin to realize that whatever you have thought isn't real, but it was something to protect you from further disappointment, you will then be much more likely to let go of that old identity. And why would that be important? Well, if you are, for example, trying to find, let's use the analogy of a relationship, a loving mate who loves you unconditionally, who respects you, who values you, who thinks you are everything in the world to them. In order for you to attract that, as an example, you first need to ready yourself for that vibration. So, if one of your things is stuff around unconditional love, in other words, you have experienced love, but it was very conditional, your ability to attract someone who loves you unconditionally will prove to be quite a task. Why? Because you don't believe it. And I have this stuckness in my throat. So some of you have been stabbed in the back before. Massive disappointment, huge ordeal, loss of trust, and just closing yourself off to being vulnerable. Now, this may have happened 2 years ago, it may have happened 20 years ago or 25 years ago, or even, however old you are, it makes no difference. Generally speaking, these things are solidified in our upbringing. Then we will build our life, and then other things will solidify our original belief. The point I'm trying to make is, you are like, think of the tower in a traditional tarot deck. The tower comes up because our environment needs to change, and whatever we have built our current environment on is standing on a foundation that has cracks in it. Anything you put on that foundation will develop further cracks, which means eventually it'll fall apart. So I'm not saying your life is falling apart. Far from it. What I am saying is, for those of you who are looking for more than what you already have, you first have to identify some of the goblins, some of the shadow aspects of yourself that are literally attracting to you what you don't want. If you tend to be someone who's fairly analytical, you might want to give yourself a break from that. Now, how do you give yourself a break from you? That's interesting, isn't it? Well, one way to deal with it is to find something to occupies your mind, so that your mind has something to do, but it is working in your favor versus against your will. Not against your will, but against what you want. So you might need to find easy ways to channel that energy. So it could be, if you're overly analytical, you might be fairly anxious. Find ways to channel some of that anxiety. And anxiety is always about the future. Depression is always about the past, and anxiety is always about the future. Now, the future, we have anxiety because of our past. So everything is connected. Point is, to relieve yourself of that anxious energy, find something enjoyable in your life and practice enjoying it and be in the moment. Because when you're in the moment of what feels good, you're not feeling anxious. And so there's various ways of dealing with an anxiety. The trick here is, if I can call it that way, is when things come up to the surface and when we're dealing with uncomfortable moments, particularly when we deal with shadow self, oftentimes our mind comes up and it wants to understand things from a certain perspective. Always remember this. Our shadow self is formed when we're children, generally speaking. From the child's perspective, things look very different than the same situation from an adult's perspective. So you trying to understand something from the past with your current level of understanding may not prove to be very useful. Instead, imagine yourself, whatever problem, let's say you've got issue with love, unconditional love, because you actually don't believe deep inside that there is such thing as unconditional love because you've been shown nothing but conditions around love. From a not human perspective, yes, from an adult perspective, you may look at your situations in early life and you go, okay, well, I understand, my dad had to work, my mom had to work, they were not around, they had to provide, they loved me, they were just not around a lot. That's a adult perspective. Now, take the same visual and look at it from, let's say, 5-year-old perspective. And that 5-year-old doesn't have the capability, logically speaking, to think things out and go, okay, mom is working, dad is working, they're taking care of me, they love me. As a matter of fact, the reason why they're not around is because they love me. That is not what a child thinks. All the child does is the child experiences, and it's in its limited ability to reason, it forms certain concepts that then become their beliefs. So looking from a perspective of a child, and this could be in any situation, when a 5-year-old is looking at his or her environment and there's no mom around and dad is not around, and they're feeling neglected and all they want is mommy and daddy, you can see that from that perspective, the child feels very different. The child may feel like it's not wanted, like it's not good enough, like other things are more important than him or her. And that begins to develop this idea that I must not be good enough, or whatever other ideas we come up with. So when you are dealing with these things, it's important to try not to obviously understand it, but try not to overanalyze it. Also, anything that comes up, particularly something that's really important, if you can, because you can't always do that, step away from the situation. Imagine watching yourself in the situation that you are struggling with. And from the observer's point of view, notice what the person that you're watching, which is you, is experiencing and what that person needs. It is a lot easier to objectify our circumstances. In other words, to detach ourselves from it to some extent. Because when we do that, we are an observer, and the emotional level to which we are attached, or the emotional attachment that we have, is lessened. And when we have less emotions around a situation, we're able to think clearly and we're able to see much more clearly. So anything that comes up, particularly big, life changes, life situations, try to look at your situation from a different perspective. Because you're going through birth and expansion, and because a lot of it is about worthiness and love, unconditional love. It's not just romantic. It's got nothing to do with romantic love. It has everything to do with love for self. And I don't know about you, but that's one of my big themes, is to learn how to love myself through experience of abandonment. So I can see that it has been difficult for many of you, and I'm not saying that will continue to be difficult. As a matter of fact, the solar consciousness message tells me that you're stepping into new awareness. 3, again, is number of expansion. You've got a lot, 3s are quite consistent. And 4 is number of stability. So as you are expanding and moving through your new awareness, you are creating a brand new solid foundation. So this the metaphor about the tower moment and the faulty foundation, or foundation with cracks, you are now solidifying a brand new foundation, and that will take time. That takes time. What is important for you to know? Anything in terms of you understanding yourself deeper, anything that comes up, take that as an opportunity to see what's trying to be experienced by you. In other words, if you are struggling with something, and chances are you are, doesn't mean it has to be big, but you want something perhaps and you're not getting it, and it's like, you're irritated. Do that exercise as an example. Imagine yourself on a screen going through your frustration, but look at yourself as an observer and notice what it is that's trying to be experienced. What's the nuts and bolts underneath? What is this experience trying to show you about you that you previously didn't know on a conscious level? When you begin to observe yourself that way in certain situations, you'll find something remarkable happens. For one, you begin to distance yourself from your emotional self, which is usually the one that's running around scared. And it's not because you're pushing that away or numbing it. You're learning how to deal with it or cope with it better. And you begin to see things from a calmer space, and all of a sudden you begin to form different realizations. Try that exercise. It's phenomenal. I do it with my long-term clients all the time, and it is so potent, so simple, but so potent. So 2 more things before I let you go. The hummingbird seems to be a theme. It's consistent. It's not only consistent in my meditations, it's consistent throughout every single message that I give. And it's all about taking flight. It's all about no longer being tied down to something that really doesn't belong to you, i.e. your belief system or somebody else's stuff, for that matter. It's about moving on, moving forward and moving on. The Ace of Swords, it's clarity. So this is what you're walking towards. It's clarity, not only what you want, but clarity about who you truly are. And I will always say this: you are a magnificent being that has no concept of your amazement. And hopefully you will keep discovering yourself and be wowed by the amazement that you are. But the human mind has no ability to comprehend the enormity of who we really are. I'm getting emotional. Just know you are amazing. And if you can allow yourself just to hear that and just to see if you can kind of own it. It's very hard. For those of you who have challenges around self-worthiness, which is majority of people I talk to, including myself, it's a difficult concept to grasp, because most people are not afraid of not having power. Most people are actually afraid of having power, being powerful. Take my word for it. Or actually, no, don't take my word for it. Think about it, contemplate it. I'm going to leave you with that. This was an amazing, amazing message. And I am so thrilled to be able to give this to you, because I know a lot of you have been struggling. There's a lot of people that are struggling right now. And that's because vinegar and oil doesn't mix. So something's got to give. If you have been stagnating for a while and things have been holding you back, this is a time where those things are more likely than not to come up to the surface in order to be cleared. So it's not a comfortable time. Birth and expansion normally isn't. For those of you who have gone through birth, and those of you, men in particular, who have watched births or just a general idea of birth, is not easy. But something amazing comes as a result of that, let's call it difficulty. So I'm going to leave that with you. I hope this was helpful. Keep in mind, there is no end date, so this will make sense to you right away, or it'll make sense to you a little bit later. Of course, for private sessions with me, that information is down below, and as always, I would be honored. If you would like to comment, I would love to read it. I always do. And thank you again so much. I wish you best of luck, and see you soon.